Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. And it's the final EVE Talk before FanFest, so I do think it's time to get a little bit excited about the future roadmap for EVE Online. It's all starting next week on April 12th and we now have the schedule for FanFest, so we know that they are going with the start of FanFest being filled with information during the EVE Online keynote. I think that's when they'll drop the dev blogs as well. So I've been expecting dev blogs to come a little bit before FanFest. Now that I'm seeing what's happening with this FanFest, I guess I was just a little bit wrong in my memory about how CCP normally does that. I also think that it's because we always had so much more information beforehand when it comes to all of the new structures. So every time a refinery came out, a citadel came out, and the engineering complexes, for instance, beforehand, by quite a margin, we had stuff like the building materials, the rigs, all the modules, all the information on outputs and bonuses and things like that. And I think that's why I thought that we would get more information in the weeks before FanFest. But it's really at FanFest on day one where all the information is going to drop. Now we did get a teaser, an absolutely awesome teaser, incredible. From Arc Studios, from the consortium. You have to check that out. Definitely go to their YouTube channel or find the thread on Reddit. They have been unlocking information by running the Drifter hives. Apparently the hives are in combat with an unknown third party. We suspect them to be the Triglavians, not sure how they'll be pronounced, but the footage from that video is just a little bit crazy. I think that they basically unlocked part of the trailer for this FanFest. That's really what it looked like to me. So very, very promising, and definitely something that you can watch several times just to try and find out what the hell is happening there. Very, very exciting stuff. We also have the new monthly report here. So the Imperium is just outperforming everyone else, especially on industry. I find that going to the Reddit thread here again is very interesting because you get lots of viewpoints on what's happening there. For instance, industry outstripping Cheetah is maybe not all that surprising, considering that Tech 2 production, for instance, might be counted several times, as every single step from raw material to final Tech 2 production will also be counted in those numbers. So, I mean, there is no doubt that the Imperium is doing really well at the moment, and that they've been investing a lot in their infrastructure, in their ability to become self-sustaining, both in Tech 1 and Tech 2 production, and that they are the most successful group in that at the moment. But there are also some nuances to make when it comes to those numbers. So very, very interesting on that front as well. And then finally, for the channel, 15,000 subscribers. Thank you all very much for that support. It's definitely a very nice milestone to reach, and it's part of the motivation for me to keep going. Although I must say, I just enjoy making videos, playing games. This is my hobby, this is my passion, this is something that I absolutely love to do. So I still have fun making these daily videos. And while EVE Online has been a little bit less effort intensive, I would say, I've also been playing a little bit less EVE Online than when I had those clear goals of the moon mining and stuff like that. I'm sticking around, guys. I'm here until they close down the servers, and I'm definitely continuing to make videos about EVE Online as well. Hopefully we get some very interesting information at FanFest, and we'll be able to set some new nice goals for ourselves and get back into some more EVE Online, maybe some different stuff than, well, what I'm doing at the moment. Lots of just exploration, try and earn some ISK, consolidate everything, and get ready for the next phase of EVE Online. I'm excited for the future, but there's also the market to take a look at, of course. That's why we are all here. So let's get started with plex and stuff at 435. There we go. Plex, ooh, well, in the 5 minutes that it took me to do the introduction here, a first plex coming in Cheetah for less than 3 million ISK. So really the sellers are at 3 million ISK, buyers are at 2.9 million ISK. And if we go and take a look at the sales and buyers in the player-owned trade hubs, A little bit below 2.3 million for the sellers and 2.9 million again for the buyers. So very narrow margin between GTA 4.4 and the player on trade hubs at the moment. If we look at the chart, we can see that we are down a bit. Lots of sales happening as well. Probably those two downward movements that are pretty sharp are probably due to sales from CCP. And now we do have FanFest as well. But there is one warning that I must tell you. This may look like complete no-brain investments. And personally, I do think that if you can pick up Plex at less than 3 million at the moment, it's not a bad deal, especially for the longer term. Oh, damn it. My throat is hurting a little bit, but we are going to get through this one. So I think it's a good idea to stock up on some Plex for less than 3 million. There is one thing to keep in mind though. CCP might tease us with very cool stuff that is for later down the line. Not for like a summer release, maybe for a winter release. That the difference between those two scenarios, in my opinion, would give pause to making massive investments in Plex right now, because it's still summertime that is coming, and generally in EVE Online activity does decrease in summertime, and if the exciting stuff is only coming out in winter, for instance, we might actually get to a lower bottom a little bit before the summer. In my opinion, that's a possible scenario as well. But at the moment, Plex back at 3 million is still 1.5 billion for 30 days game time, so historically speaking we're still at very expensive Plex. But the perception, of course, is completely different now that Plex are divided by 500 and going for 3 million. This is, I would also say, possibly a nice psychological new bottom price for Plex here to keep in mind. 3 million. And anything above that is starting to be profit if you buy your Plex right now. So I would say you can definitely make some of these investments if you have the ISK for it. Just don't go crazy. Keep some reserves so that you might be able to pick up the bottom that could come as well if the summertime doesn't bring the hype and actually lowers activity even more. Next up, we have the multiple pilot training certificates. Again, if you have some ISK for that, I would definitely invest in this as well. Oversold, basically. CCP's special actions have driven the price down from 1.3 billion to selling for 900 million ISK, and the buyers are at 852 million ISK. I would say it's gonna be a pretty long-term affair if you do invest in these multiple pilot training certificates, but considering where we're at, I would say that it's not a bad idea to invest in at least a couple of those, because you can see that you're buying something for like 900 million ISK and they've already sold for 1.5 billion in the past. It's gonna be a matter of absorbing all the supply that has been created here, but eventually we're pretty certain that will get there, unless CCP pulls a very dirty trick and like devices one by 500 or something like that as well, or just gets rid of the pilot training certificates or something like that. That would be very bad news then. But I don't see them pushing sales this hard in the last month or so, and I'm completely gutting the market that they've created because of it. So multiple pilot training certificate looks even more interesting than Plex, but you will need a lot more patience, I think, in this one to get your profits out of it than in Plex itself. That might go a lot faster. Next up, we have the skill extractors, of course, following Plex quite closely. Already up a little bit at the tail end here, went very close to 330 million. Currently selling for 334. Buyers are at 326. I'm quite surprised by the very narrow margin here again. So it does look like we are basically landing. This might be the FanFest landing EVE talk here, where the market is basically, we're set, let's go, let's get that information. All bets are off. Everyone has made their bets, and we have to see what comes out at FanFest and what the reaction will be then. Because here, clearly a little bit of hesitation, a little bit of a bottom forming for skill extractors after all of those sales, and you can see availability is quite large, but the margin is extremely narrow, so sellers and buyers have basically found each other at this price range. For the large skill injectors next, back up a little bit. That's quite interesting, up above 800 million. This to me is a very strong indication that there is still this strong demand for skill points, and they are selling for 811 million ISK. The buyers are at 790. Again, pretty narrow margin there, although up a little bit probably because of the higher demand and the sell prices going up a little bit. A very interesting comment that I saw in the economics report thread on Reddit, that more ISK for the Imperium or more ISK for an alliance means more characters for an alliance. Not necessarily more players, but if you're looking to invest all of that ISK that you've got, why not invest that in another character that can fly a Rorcal, that can fly a carrier and up your rating numbers, maybe an industry character, a PI character. All of that stuff takes skill points, and when you are an established player that already has their Rorcal pilots, maybe an industry backbone, things like that, it makes a lot of sense to just straight up invest in the skill points through the injectors. Once you've got the ISK for it, create your next character that you'll have use for, and up the character count that way. So I do think that, especially from nullsec, there is still this very strong demand for skill points. I'm personally not sure what the demand is looking like for alpha clones, but I can imagine that it would take many alpha clones filling up their entire pool to make up for just a couple of Rorcal carrier capable pilots. So I would say that that comment to me was a strong indication that a lot of this demand is nullsec driven, and so for the price of skill injectors I would definitely keep an eye on nullsec activity. Next up we have the small skill injector, up even more sharply, quite interesting, going up to 170 million ISK. Well, no, actually, looks like this one is a bit of a feint, and that this is actually more the actual average price. 163 million for the sellers, 156 for the buyers. Again, still a very narrow margin, going up a little bit I think from the previous weeks because of increased demand and the price going back up. So here we have a bottom at less than 160 million ISK. I always said that I really like potentially the injectors as an investment, but I fear that for the actual bottom here, if they are the precursor for plex and the extractors, for instance, or even the multiple pilot train certificates, that the bottom may have been here and that it may be here for plex, it may be here for extractors, same with pilot train certificates. So if you're seeing these as a bit of a canary in the coal mine for plex themselves, then you should definitely see this as a signal to buy. Next up we have the daily alpha injectors slowly going back up to 60 million. Again, this chart, because the item is so new, is not very good just yet. I think that once we get to like close to a 1 year chart, we'll see a very stable good here, because you're buying this directly from CCP. 60 million for the sellers, 56 million for the buyers. Next up we have some minerals on the menu. 1305. Whoops, excuse me, not supposed to bounce against the microphone like that. I hope that it's not too bad, but we're gonna continue. Here is the titanium chart, very interesting. Another bounce off of 5 ISK here, so we went up to 5.5 ISK, down to less than 5, up to 5.5, back down again. You can also see the volume swings here, here and here. When we reach 5.5, there's some pretty massive dumping happening, driving the price back down, but eventually the market does absorb all of that supply, because titanium, let's see here, put the filter back on, Jita is back up to 5 ISK 24, not bad, halfway back to 5.5, and buyers are forced up to 5.16 ISK as well. So once again, titanium, nice little comeback, more than 5 ISK. I think that we can be very happy with that price if you're mining in HiSec. Here is pyrite, also a little bit of a comeback, back up to 4.5 ISK, and 4.5 ISK, yeah, on the chart. 4.46 for the sellers, that's still quite cheap. 4.24 for the buyers as well. So historically speaking, this is definitely pretty bad, but for the first time in a couple of weeks, we're not at a 1 year low point, so we've made a little bit of a jump back up for pyrite. Hopefully it's a sign of strong demand here. Next up we have Mexalon, not Isogen. Mexalon still doing quite well here. I would say if industry numbers are strong in nullsec. That does mean some extra demand for Mexelon, and thus we are staying at a price above 75 ISK, 80, almost 81 ISK in fact for the sellers, and 76 almost for the buyers. Not bad, definitely still your focus if you're mining high-sec ores. Next up here we've got Isogen, and here the bad news just continues. I mean, we try to go back up a little bit, but it just gets snuffed out by more supply right away. We're gonna see Isogen at 30 ISK pretty soon. 32.17 for the sellers, 30.44 for the buyers, and still that pressure, look, that is crazy. 123 million, 78 million, 166 million units. It's still coming in droves. It's pretty obvious that the leftover mineral in nullsec seems to be Isogen, that eventually finds its way to Jita 44, and pyrite is also one of the minerals that's in that situation. Next up we have Noxium, what used to be the in-between mineral, but now I would say that Noxium, Zydrine and Megasite are all like not really nullsec minerals anymore, but they are a different classification than just the pure high-sec minerals, you could say. Noxium going down towards 300 ISK once again, so same bottom as a couple of months ago in December, January, but 305, 305 ISK for the sellers, 298 for the buyers. Noxium at a 1 year low point once again. Next up we have Zydrine, which is continuing to crash down, and here that is basically Zydrine is no longer a nullsec mineral. It's also being produced quite massively in 0.5 systems at this point, and that is why we are going to head towards 600 ISK on the chart. 656 for the sellers, 626 for the buyers, so it's just a gradual drive down as supply keeps increasing. There's more players on the market, more people willing to just get rid of their Zydrine for liquid ISK, and some of them are from high-sec, shorter and safer travel opportunities as well there. So all of that is just steadily driving down the price. How low can this go? I'm not sure, but if you look at Megasite, not Mexelon, it's the very same thing. Tried a little bit of resistance at 875, but look at that, we're just plowing straight through the 800 mark at this point. 797 ISK for the sellers, 762 for the buyers of Megasite. Definitely 1 year low points again. And this is the impact from moon mining. It has basically gotten rid of the monopoly situation in nullsec, and this is really a dynamic that has been changed by CCP. What used to be nullsec specific, and then nullsec needs high-sec in order to supplement their minerals, such as Mexelon, but probably also pyrite and Isogen back in the days. All of that has been changed, and regions have become much more self-sustainable at this point, especially when it comes to Tech 1 production. Even in high-sec now, you can basically get everything except for a morphite, which is still doing okay, between 9 and 10,000 ISK. That's where we're hovering. Small buy opportunity once you see the chart below 9,000 ISK, I would say. Currently selling for 9,700, okay, 9,300 for the buyers. So an in-between period here, I would say. Wait for those buy opportunities when you can pick it up for less than 9,000 ISK. So yeah, for the mineral market though, this is just a new reality, and the impact of all of that has been that generally speaking, minerals have gone down in price, which should mean cheap Tech 1 chips, of course. Is that a good or a bad thing? Well, it depends, right? If you like to mine yourself, then you are seeing your efficiency go down. If you're a manufacturer who also mines himself, then yeah, you're just seeing lots of effort for a less and less return. On the other hand, it creates a completely different dynamic when it comes to risking these kinds of ships. So it's you know, it's a sandbox. There's not really anything that's ever going to be outright negative or outright positive for the game. In general, we're just looking at more activity, and well, lots of people investing in moons in 0.5 systems, in wormhole space as well probably, and lots of economic activity in nullsec as well. So that has been the philosophy from CCP with all of those changes, and I would say that they've given a lot to nullsec, who has become quite self-sustainable, but they've also given back to highsec as well, with the ability to move your way up into different structures, and thus also get access to minerals that we previously couldn't. Let's move on to PI next at 1945. There we go. And let's go over these. So here are the broadcast nodes. That's a weird data point at 2.4 million. I don't think that's realistic just yet. Might have been today's sale or something like that. These are, well, actually selling for 2.4 million. Buyers are at 2 million. Very interesting in my opinion. Sellers above average, you're definitely still paying a premium on that, but buyers are saying, hell no, we've had enough of that. We're going back to a normal 2 million price here. So an opening up of the margin between buyers and sellers. 400,000 is about a fifth of the buy price. That is not bad. Availability seems quite high here, and I would say that broadcast nodes, if you have a little bit of patience, I think sellers will get under pressure at this point. So maybe also if you keep in mind that now the only real teaser that we know from FanFest and for the future development is actually the Triglavian stuff, what's happening with the drifters there. There might have been some people saying, you know what, there might not be a new structure right on the horizon, so maybe we shouldn't be too crazy about these PI materials, and thus the buyers go back down in price a little bit. Possible scenario. Construction blocks continuing on its strength, in fact heading for a 1-year high point. Not bad. 15,100 ISK for the sellers, 14,400 ISK for the buyers. Very strange situation. Does somebody know something that we don't? All of that is speculation. But what I can tell you is that if you have construction blocks or if you produce them, definitely a great time to sell them. Next up we have the consumer electronics. After several months of a very strong 15,000 price point, with a massive volume increase, we are going down in price a little bit. Selling now for 14,000 ISK, buyers are at 13,000 ISK, and it's just a decent amount of supply that is coming in here that is finally driving the price back down. So I would say that a likely scenario, although we've been here before in February, is that more people have started focusing on consumer electronics. Impact on fuel prices. This to me is very interesting, so that might have been what's happening. If you can make consumer electronics, what would you be dropping in order to produce more of those stuff? Like coolants, of course, that has been hovering in the 8,000 to 9,000 ISK region for quite a while, but all of a sudden a little jump up to 9,000 ISK together with a fuel jump, which we can see from the ticker below. Nitrogen fuel blocks up quite a bit all of a sudden. Very interesting. 9,000 ISK for the sellers, 8,600 for the buyers. Well, if we take the average of the last few months, at least now we have a 9,000 ISK coolants, a little bit better than average there. Enriched uranium next, also fuel related, still holding at 11,000 ISK, something around there. So no jump up here. 11,500 for the sellers, 10,700 for the buyers. You know, we're doing okay considering what's been happening after the moon mining changes, but we're definitely still in pretty cheap enriched uranium territory. Integrity response drones next, very interesting to me as well, went up to more than 3 million ISK. Let's assume that the sellers managed to unload some response drones at more than 3 million ISK. They're now down to 2.7 million for the sellers and 2.37 million for the buyers. So again, I am seeing that pressure where people are saying either they're done with their investments or they're not so sure anymore that there's actually structures on the horizon. Mechanical parts next. Up in price a little bit as well, fuel related, but you can see here we went below 9,000 ISK and now we're selling for 9.3, buyers at 9,000 ISK. So fuels a slight jump up. Very interesting. Nuclear reactors next. Okay, I like this. I like this. This has been one of those that you might want to trade because of the awesome variations that we're seeing in the chart here. And after having been after selling for 130,000 ISK for almost a full month here is the rapid decline to less than 100,000 ISK again. Sellers at 91,000, buyers at 75,000. We just ran dry of any demand here. And nice little buy opportunity. I mean, 75,000 is beneath the entire chart. Must have been a pretty massive supply dump that just started filling up sell orders like crazy. And so those buyers just moving down. Nobody interested in that? Well, I am. Nuclear reactors look very interesting for a quick investment. You can see the potential. 130 is definitely not crazy. 150, 180 is even possible on maybe potentially another structure. I think the timing is right for that one. Robotics next, holding above 100,000 ISK. I'd say that that's still good, right? 102,000 for the sellers, 94,000 for the buyers. Not as good as where we come from, but definitely still a strong price for a fuel-related PI material. Self-harmonizing power cores next, back down to the average price, a little bit above 2 million. Nothing too crazy there. 2.2 for the sellers, almost 2.1 for the buyers. Availability feels quite strong. I'd say a little bit of patience. And on is a FanFest without too much concrete evidence on new structures. We might actually see this drop off and create a real buy opportunity. Superconductors still quite strong at 14,000 ISK on the chart, 14,700 for the sellers, 13,500 for the buyers. Definitely worth looking into if you can produce or bring that to the market. Test cultures next, getting under pressure, below 8,750 on the chart, 9,000 for the sellers, 8,700 for the buyers. A little bit strange, but we had two buy opportunities at less than 7,500. So if you wanted to make that investment, this is definitely where you should have made them. And then finally we have the wetware mainframes that we're still paying a bit of a premium. I see some pressure at the tail end. Are we heading for less than 2.5 million? No, still 2.6 million for the sellers, almost 2.5 million for the buyers. There is still a premium in some of these advanced PI materials, but we're also seeing some pressure in them as well. Cool. Next up we have the Take One chips at 2620. There we go. Make sure that I don't bump into the microphone again. Let's go over these. I'm suspecting lots of pressure, of course, if we see what the mineral prices are doing at the moment, just especially the Nulsic ones just going down, down, down. That should mean really cheap Take One chips in general. Here is the Apocalypse selling for 145 million, buyers at 131, and you can definitely see that the recovery from the arms race event is stalling and that we are settling at a price below the rest of the chart. The Caracal next, there is some pressure here, definitely heading back for less than 9 million ISK. Is this fuel just mineral related? Probably not, seems a bit too sharp for that. But on the other hand, you know, we can expect these spikes to 10 million to become harder and harder to achieve. Less than 9 million for the sellers, 8.5 million for the buyers. The catalysts now, you know, staying below 1.25 million. It's really strange that it's still managing to hold on to a higher average than before December, but that's the situation. 1.5 million for the sellers, 1.15 million for the buyers. The Drake also, you know, definitely breaking the mold back on the downtrend here, less than 45 million again, 43.5 for the sellers, 39.5 for the buyers. I think that is mineral pressure, right? People are producing Drakes from the current mineral prices and they can just sell them still at a profit or close to margin at a lower price. Ferox next, you know, here at the tail end, some pressure. Here are the peaks decreasing, but I do suspect that just like the Drake, we will eventually see a Ferox for less than 45 million. We're not there yet. 47.7 for the sellers, 44 million for the buyers. Hurricane staying, yeah, there you go. Also, look at that, trying above, but here now sustainably going below 45 million in my opinion. 44 million for the sellers, 41.5 for the buyers. And then the Megatron, same story, 150 million and definitely recovering below the previous chart. That's the arms race event that happened there. So here is the Oracle. Had some nice strength, 80 million twice in the last couple of months, but we're back down below 75 million. And here come the sellers, 74 million. Competition still going on here. I would say it's because they can produce these more cheaply. The Raven next, same story, heading back to 150. Pressure at the tail end here, 152 for the sellers, 140 for the buyers. Retriever next, also definitely still in at a pretty low point, although it was always pretty low here. I would say the story is that these averages are not higher because Orca and Rorcal have basically taken over the market of these mining barges in general. So they've just not been in vogue for quite a while. Tempest also managed to go up to 160 million, but yeah, with these mineral prices, you can do better than that. Down to 140, 143 for the sellers, 134 for the buyers. Thrasher next, also look at that, heading for a 1-year low point, less than $1 million for a Thrasher. It's here right now. Tornado, the one difference, but that's obviously on a big purchase. Look at that volume increase after reaching 65 million on the chart. We're now selling them for 73.5, buyers still at 62, so it's definitely just been a massive purchase of tornadoes, and I think that we will recover. And if you look at these average prices, considering current mineral prices, I think we'll go back down below 65 million pretty soon. Tristan, same thing here. I think it's definitely a nice chart showing the mineral pressure here on something that's very easy to produce, also doesn't take too many minerals, but we are now sustainably below 500,000 ISK for the Tristan. Venture next, a little bit of pressure at the tail end. Again, to my surprise, still selling above the average from before November. Maybe there are still some people just running resource wars using Tristans. It might just be an alpha clone ship that is being used. If you want to mine as an alpha clone, what else are you gonna use? So it does show that there is some quite strong venture usage at the moment, to my surprise. Vexor next also, you know, try to go back above 10 million, but look at the pressure here, selling for 9.8 million. It's just inevitable with these mineral prices. The Tech 1 market, my expectation is that we are going to continue to go down in price unless CCP announces something exciting at FanFest, but I don't expect them to. I think that they're actually happy with the situation as I explained it. You know, you've got more self-sustaining bubbles, self-sustaining regions that are cropping up into the game, which I think was their design goal. Tech 2 ships, that might be a little bit of a different story at 3130. There we go. Bad news for my theory. The Ares is back up way above 30 million, 31 million in fact on the chart. Again, close to that previous peak. So will prices below 30 million, already a chart below 30 million indicate buy opportunity? It is possible. 31 million for the sellers, 27 million for the buyers. I was looking for that 25 million chart to happen at some point, but the Ares is not making that happen. That's for the frigates, I should say. Here's the Cerberus. Usually event-related spikes do happen. Very popular PvE ship here, back down to 280 million. A little bit less than that for the sellers, 266 for the buyers. Here's the Claw. Also up in price and back up to 35 million. Very bad news. We've only seen that back in January. So selling for 34 million. Buyers are at 28.6 million. And no sign. Well, we're getting a little bit closer every time. But are we going to get to that 25 million charts? I'm not sure anymore. Here is the Crow, back up above 32.5 million ISK. 34 for the sellers, 30.5 for the buyers. I would definitely say if you manage to buy some Crows here at these price points, probably 27, 28 million. Definitely a slight buy opportunity here because there's just none of them available. You're paying a nice premium. We're back at a high point that hasn't been reached since December. So the Crow, this has become a sell opportunity. Unfortunately, the timing of the buy opportunities is not gonna get close to 25 million. It looks like it might just be 27 to 28 million on some of these ships. Here's the Crusader next, same thing, jumping back up above 30 million, is currently selling for 32 million. What were our buy opportunities? 26 to 27 million on this one. So again, maybe a slight sell opportunity. I would like to see bigger variation, but this is definitely a jump up in prices across the board of all of these frigates. It's important to note it. Next up here we got the Heretic, still selling for around 80 million ISK. Hound next. Look at that. Another jump up here from 30 million to currently selling for 37 million, 29 million still for the buyers though. They're not budging, but that's definitely a nice slight sell opportunity if you picked up some hounds at, let's say, 28 million ISK. Ishtar next, also jumping up in price, currently selling for 280 million, 260 for the buyers. Manticore, staying at 35 million. So Manticore has always been a little bit different because it's definitely more expensive for some reason than all the other stealth bombers. 32 million for the buyers. Yeah, tricky to say if you should be selling here or buying. I don't like either of these points, but okay. Here's the Nemesis. This one is interesting in my opinion. I think 25 million on the chart that I did call this a buy opportunity, and currently we're back up selling for 31.5 million. Buyers are at 29 million. That is not so bad. So I would say if you have a lot of patience in the Tech 2 market, eventually we might get to that point where sellers are sell opportunities are like above 30 million, buy opportunities are below 25 million. I'd say that's a nice margin to play with there. But if you don't have the patience for that, because who knows when that's gonna happen. We've been belied again or delayed again, you could say, in the last week here, with nice increases in price in some of these frigates. Then you know, just look for really prices below 30 million. Look for charts like the Nemesis here and actually start making your moves. I wouldn't blame you if you started doing that, especially on the frigates. Anything bigger than that, you can see here, very tricky to do. Volumes are not that great and the prices are a little bit crazy in my opinion. 82 million for a command destroyer is very, very expensive. But for the Purifier, for instance, right, 30 million seems to be the bottom price for the Purifier, and look at that, nice spike up, almost 40 million again, 38.5 for the seller. So if you could have picked these up here for less than 30 million, you're making a nice profit on this trade right here. So I think that we should start to see, to look at in this last few months at the bottoms that have been forming here as potential bottoms, especially when they're broken on the chart, as buy opportunities. And here another spike up to 40 million, something that we haven't seen since mid-January, is bad news for my theory of another leg down to like 25 million bottom prices. Raptor next, also up in price a little bit, taking off from 30 million again, currently selling for 33 million. Then we've got the Saber up in price. That's an interdictor. I'd say it's a little bit too early to gamble on those. But here is the Stiletto, for instance. Let's see if we can actually get a legend that works. Went as low as 27.5 million. Currently again selling for 31.3 million. Not enough in my opinion for a trade. I would love to see this chart go down to 25 million as a sure thing, but it's going to be very hard actually to do so apparently for this market. Stork went up to 100 million again, selling for 91. This is, I mean, this is nice, right? You could have bought them for 70 million and you're still selling them for 91 million, but it does feel like a pretty massive gamble on low volume. It's going to be very tricky to actually make that trade happen. And then finally we have the Taranis that is still staying below 30 million. Is got this buy opportunity at 25, currently selling for 28 million. Maybe with a bit of patience, if the Taranis also shoots up next week like all the other frigates have done this week, you could actually have a sell opportunity there again. But I would understand if you're running out of patience at this point, because on some of these, like the Crow here for instance, you had a nice trade opportunity to go from 28.5 million to 33 million. A Crusader, another one that has been for 27.5 million, again back up way above 30 million. And then some of these stealth bombers especially, I think 29 million for the buyers, and then here 40 million. That's nice, a third of the buy price up here all of a sudden. That's nice and volatile. That was definitely potentially a very nice trade. And so if you don't want to wait for the chart to hit 25 million anymore, I certainly wouldn't blame you. I'm not going to risk it personally. I still have a longer time horizon and other stuff to do with my ISK, but yeah, this is obviously showing that there is still volatility, that the upward potential for these frigates might be as much as 35 to 40 million, especially on the stealth bomber front. Waiting for that bottom price of 25 million might not be the best tactic. Next up we have the Tech 3 market at 38.50. There we go. Let's take a look at these. You can already see from the ticker, you've probably seen it, that the Tengu went up in price again. So I was a little bit worried about the rest of them, but let's start with the destroyers. Here is the Confessor, sustainably below 40 million at this point, 36 million for the sellers, 33.8 for the buyers. Oversupply, I mean, it's still there, still almost a full front page in the last 24 hours with more than 100 of them coming to the market. But the chart is starting to look quite interesting. Less than 34 million for the buyers. That is pretty low on this chart. If you want to do a Confessor investment, I would say you could try to pick some up at the buy orders. Next up here we get the Hecate, same story, substantially below 40 million. Once again, let's take a look at supply. Look at the competition here. 43 million, 40 million, 36.9 million, 36 million, 35 million, and now we're all the way down to 34.9 million, and we're still talking for 500 Hecates here coming in at these price ranges, which is quite a lot. Very nice chart again to start making your investments. Buyers are at 32.5 million, very cheap. If you look at the chart here, we're definitely playing close to 1 year lows here once again. So I would say Hecate, especially with that massive oversupply, looks quite interesting to try and pick some up again below 33 million. You'd need some nullstick action for it to turn around though, but this is obviously a slight opportunity. Here is the Jackdaw currently selling for 40 million, buyers are down to 36 million. Not as obvious or good an opportunity, I would say, as the Confessor and the Hecate, but definitely still below 40 million as well. So a nice opportunity, I would say there. Just don't go crazy. It's something I always say when I do spots, but are in my opinion buy opportunities. Don't spend all your risk on a single one, of course. And then finally we have the Svepel. Also look at that going down in price, 30 million previous bottom, but just look at this this downslope here. 35 million for the sellers, 32 million for the buyers. You can see the lack of buyers here, and 32 million is not that much above the previous bottom. So yeah, Svepel, Confessor, Hecate, I like it for a small purchase in those, to be honest. Next up we have the cruisers. Here is the Legion, just pretty stable, 140 for the sellers, 130 for the buyers. Not crazily oversupplied either, so could still go either way on that one. Loki, same thing, a little bit below 200 million, 195 for the sellers, quite strong supply there, 183 for the buyers. Seems to be stable considering the very high price. I don't think we're gonna shoot up all too drastically all of a sudden, but dropping down, it seems to be too popular for that. Proteus, pretty stable as well, 140 for the sellers, 130 for the buyers. Availability quite okay, but not crazy. It's one big seller of 117, but for the rest it's not too crazy. And then finally we have the Tengu that actually did go up in price. I'm not even seeing the volumes here, so that's quite kind of crazy. 180 for the sellers, 165 for the buyers here. Must have been like a massive relisting or something like that, because this is or just changing of the prices on the seller side. That is possible as well, which is quite crazy because it's not completely oversupplied either. There's this one seller at 180, but other than that, nope. So very interesting here in my opinion. A completely different picture between the cruisers that are not oversupplied, and most of them are stable except the Tengu, where someone is trying to get the price to go up all of a sudden, or that is probably trying to just completely corner that market and now take some profit. But the destroyers though are oversupplied, heading for 1 year low points. Definitely interesting buy order territory there. And then for the extra product, I chose the faction battleships this week at 43.10, let's say. There we go, because there are some popular ones that that can be quite interesting. So we've got the battleships, then we've got the faction battleships. We'll start with the navy ones. Let's see if we can see some faction warfare action here. For instance, very nice Apocalypse Navy issue, went as low as 330 million, high point of 500 million ISK. Yeah, 500 for the sellers, 410 for the buyers. So apparently the Amar are not doing too great, or there is extremely strong demand for the ship. It is a very interesting ship, I think, and used in Gnostic doctrines before as well. You do see some nice volumes here, but that is quite a wild swing, and that would have been a nice buy here. Let's be honest. These charts are so interesting, but really to check them every week I don't think is the best way to go about this. Honestly, if you want to get in on these trades, just you have to, I think, get a couple of characters into faction warfare, because it is faction warfare that is really driving these volatilities, these opportunities. Armageddon Navy issue, something to note, very flat. Just basically the inflation chart is what I'm seeing here. More ISK in the game, currently selling for 564, just the lack of availability. Dominic's Navy issue creeping up in price. We know that Caldari are doing really well in faction warfare. That's the impact right here. Buy opportunities at 450, currently selling for 528, not bad. Not yet at a 1 year high point, but obviously Gallente need to do something about that in faction warfare if we want the price to go back down. Megatron Navy issue, same situation. In fact, 1 year high point, currently selling for nothing. There are none available. You can ask whatever you want for a Megatron Navy issue here. Again, showing the that the Gallente faction warfare is not doing too great and the Caldari are winning at the moment. Very interesting. If you have a Megatron Navy issue lying around that you somehow managed to get at the cheap, which in the last year was definitely possible, you might get a very nice profit of that. Now here comes the Raven Navy issue, and we should see a crash in price. We are seeing that exactly from 600 million is currently selling for 445 bars at 410. That is the faction warfare movement, guys. Very interesting market. Definitely something that you can make a lot of ISK in. And I know that Market Dragon, for instance, is very active in that at the moment in the Caldari warfare. So I would say that he's probably farming all of that LP and maybe also already buying stuff as well. But if you can farm them now, they're not worth that much. But if you get a turnaround in faction warfare again, of course, you can see that LP for Raven Navy issues, for instance, would be crazy valuable. Scorpion Navy issues, same story, right? Peak in February for 700 million. Look at the availability increase as Caldari are winning out. 481 for the sellers, 431 for the buyers. Close to 1 year low, same with the Raven Navy issue in my opinion. You could even look to invest in those that are on the market, I think. Tempest Fleet issue next for Minmatar, basically holding on its average, and Typhoon Navy issue is going up in price. Is it really selling for 550? No, 500 million. Stalling that increase in price, above average, but a lot more stable. The Caldari Gallente faction warfare seems to be where the action is. Next up, the pirate faction battleships, which I think lots of people are interested in. The second one, the Macariel. Let's look at the Bargus first. 900 million is decently stable. I would say not too much action going on there. Macariel, slowly heading down in price. That's interesting. Are we below 500 million? Is 510 for the sellers, 486 for the buyers. I'd say, you know, it's being massively produced. You can see the pressure on the price to go back below 500 million ISK. If we ever do so, that would again mean that the era of the Macariel might still be here. The availability of these ships still seems to be quite strong. Nestor next, also under pressure a little bit, but nothing too crazy. Here basically on an average price. Nightmare actually at a 1 year high point, quite interesting, selling for 588 million ISK, 550 for the buyers. 1 year high point for the Nightmare. Nice sell opportunity if you have some Nightmares lying around. Balgorn, bit of volatility, but nothing too crazy in my opinion. Rattlesnake though, look at that, up to 550 million. I think I do know the story here. You have, of course, that crazy drop from the hunt that is just perfect for the Rattlesnake, because the Rattlesnake has, let's take a quick look at the traits here, bonuses to kinetic and thermal missile damage, shield resistance, and then that crazy sentry drone and heavy drone bonus. Of course, you now have a module that ups all these damages, both missiles and drones. Absolutely perfect for something like the Gila, like the Rattlesnake, and so it's not surprising that the popularity of that increased all of a sudden. And then we've got the Vindicator that is just, you know, doing okay, around 500 million ISK, I think. Yeah, 500 for the sellers. So there we go, guys. That's it for this week's EVE Talk. Looking forward to FanFest, and hopefully we get some nice new goals out of that. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you all next time.